Are you ready? Are you ready, bitch?
It was the night before Thanksgiving, and all through MNN, everyone was waiting for sandwich night to begin. The tables were covered with toppings and schmear as we waited for Leonard the Sandwich Lion to appear. It's all about the Holy Trinity, guys. The bread, the filling, which can be pretty much anything, and the other fucking piece of bread!
Live from my grandmother's basement, we are currently the only Chris Gethard Show podcast.
It's true.
We're not on iTunes, but
No.
we're still Emily Pineapple.
And Forrest, the keeper of the Canon.
And we are profiling that which is to happen every Wednesday night on Chris Gethard Presents, live on the MNN network.
And at chrisgeth.com/live.
And usually I say we profile the comedian that's
Yes.
going to be up. But this week, it's Sandwich Night.
Sandwich night. Sandwich night. Sandwich night. Sandwich night. Sandwich night.
So Sandwich Night is a super long tradition. How long is the tradition?
This will be the 9th sandwich night.
So it's a 9-year-old tradition. And we thought that for this episode, for this beautiful holiday, we would bring you a little bit of a history of Sandwich Night and also the history of the sandwich.
The two are inexorably linked, of course. You can't have sandwich night without sandwiches.
And you can't have sandwiches without a night of sandwiches.
It's true. It's the inevitable outcome once sandwiches were invented.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So why don't we just get right into it? Yeah, so we'll start off with a brief history of the sandwich.
And then a brief history of sandwich night.
And so the origins of the sandwich. The very first sandwich that was like recorded or sandwich-like thing that was written down as a sandwich. Of course, a sandwich is like stuff inside of bread.
Yes.
And since there has been bread, people have been putting stuff in it. And so there have always been sandwiches. But the first time it was written down that a sandwich occurred was in the 1st century BC with, guess who? The famous Rabbi Hillel the Elder.
So you're saying sandwiches are older than Jesus?
Yes.
Wow.
Far older.
Wow. Well, yeah, 100 years.
Yeah. So what he did, and I of course have done many Passovers in my time. But what he did is on Passover, we Jews are supposed to eat matzah, which are unleavened bread. They're like crackers.
Yeah.
And we are also supposed to eat bitter herbs and haroset. So that is like a nice mixture of like sweet things, nuts and apples and spices. And that's to symbolize the sweetness of freedom. And the bitter herbs are the bitterness of slavery. And it's usually horseradish. So what this fucker did was he slapped both on a matzah and closed that shit up like a sandwich. And everyone knew him, and they're like, fuck, we should do what he does. And it's really tasty.
I mean, yeah, no, it's really good. It's the best way to taste the bitter herbs.
Oh, yeah. And it's a nice sandwich. It's a nice sandwich.
Yeah.
Nice sandwich. But the sandwich as we know it was popularized in England, of course, in 1762 by the guy y'all have heard about, the 4th Earl of Sandwich, Mr. John Montague. And yeah, so this was written about by this guy, Pierre Jean Grosley. And he wrote this about the sandwich in the late 1700s. Let's set the scene of the late 1700s. This is like between like 1750 and like 1780.
Okay, so like the tail end of It America happens.
Of It America?
No, the tail end of that period, the Revolutionary War
Yup.
is happening.
Oh yeah. So there's a lot of tensions. There's a lot of things going down. Mr. Earl de Montague was a known rake. You know what that means? It's an
like
old word.
a gadfly, a man about town, a scoundrel.
Town. That scoundrel. He was a gambler. He was many other things. written by Mr. Pierre-Jean Grosley, a minister of state passed 24 hours at a public gaming table, so absorbed in play that, during the whole time, he had no substance but a piece of beef between 2 slices of toasted bread, which he ate without ever quitting the game. This new dish grew highly in vogue. During my residence in London, it was called by the name of the minister who invented it.
My word.
My word. But of course, we know exactly where Montague got this. We know where he got this. He had been traveling in the Mediterranean, where bitches were eating food in pitas.
So it's another example of the proud British tradition of seeing something and then just going, oh, I totally invented that because I brought it to England, and England is all that matters.
Yep.
Great.
100%.
Yeah.
So again, sandwiches have been around forever, but in the grand old English tradition, they were claimed by the English. So the beginning of the sandwich history is in this sort of beautiful celebration of freedom and tradition and bitterness and sweetness. And then we see almost the next step of our knowledge of sandwiches is this cruel colonialism.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I mean, it is truly the food that symbolizes civilization in so many ways.
It is. So initially, the sandwich was considered a food for like dudes who are gambling and drinking at night. But it started appearing more in polite society among the aristocracy, where they would, make them really pretty and cut the crusts off of
so
the breads.
So these are like the cucumber sandwiches that you might have at tea time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're like fancy shit. But then their popularity started increasing a ton more, and more for similar reasons that Montague, I'm calling him Montague, he's sandwich, but I need to differentiate.
I appreciate that you're not referring to him by his title. I think, we should just refer to him as a human being and not defer to his title just because he was an earl.
Montague is also a really fun name to say.
That's also true.
Yeah. So basically, it got really popular. Why? The Industrial Revolution.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that makes sense because you'd have all the laborers and stuff going to factories and working, and they needed food that they could carry conveniently without making a mess, and they were easy to prepare, right?
Yep. So around 1850, there was they say at least 70 street vendors selling hand sandwiches to factory workers going to and from work.
I know that pasties had a similar sort of origin where miners liked them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Very similar to the sandwich. Yeah, so once again, the oppression of the many by the few has spread the sandwich wealth. It is perhaps our only salve in these days. So by the time of the Revolutionary War, by 1776, there's a ton of sandwiches in England, but there's no record of them in America. None at all. Yeah. There's no word of them until they appear in a cookbook in 1840. Why? Why did America not jump on this perhaps most American of dishes? You would think, it's scrappy, you grab it on the go, you're an entrepreneur, all these things. Why? Because we fucking hated the British.
It's true. We did. We did. And I mean, it's funny because rejecting food because we hate the country it's from remains a proud American tradition to this very day.
Really?
Like freedom fries.
Oh, like freedom fries. Fuck me.
And your victory cabbage from World War II. The sauerkraut.
Well, that's the thing is that they figure that they didn't want to use the word sandwich because it comes from the British peerage system, which Americans were specifically pissy at.
Which is why we call him Montague.
Yeah, exactly. But apparently by 1840, they all forgot. Schools weren't that good, okay? Also, who fucking records, sandwiches and, who made that except for the internet? I swear to God. So in 1840, the sandwich was introduced to America by Miss Englishwoman Elizabeth Leslie. And in her cookbook, Directions for Cookery, she has a recipe for ham sandwiches. They're ham sandwiches.
What ham and what?
Bread and mustard.
Oh, that is a ham sandwich. It's the most literal. Wow, that sounds very. I mean, I'm glad they included the mustard at least, because otherwise it would be all too dry. But it still sounds pretty dry.
Douglas Adams has a whole thing. He wrote multiple like essays about how bad English sandwiches are. And how, like, the English just, like, take pride in having the most disgusting, driest, blandest sandwiches.
Huh.
Yeah, and how he hates American sandwiches. He even made one of his characters in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, like, become a sandwich maker. Like, he crash landed on a planet, and this isn't, like, the 5th fucking Hitchhiker's Guide book. Spoilers. He, like, crashes on a planet and is part of, like, a small, like, you know, tribe civilization. And the thing that he brings to them, like, the reason why they, like, let him stick around is because he makes sandwiches.
But Douglas Adams hated American sandwiches?
No, he hated English sandwiches.
Okay. I think, okay. That makes way more sense. I thought it was all this lead up about how he's trashing English sandwiches, and at the end he's like, but they're still better than American sandwiches.
No, he liked American sandwiches.
Good. I can still like Douglas Adams.
Yeah. But basically by the 1920s, sandwiches had really fucking caught on. Yeah. I know that there was like 100-year gap here, but sandwiches basically just continued to do their thing. In the Civil War, fuckers were eating sandwiches.
Right.
They're easy to grab when you're running around trying to murder each other.
Exactly.
In 1920s, everyone had just gotten back from World War I, where once again, fuckers were running around trying to kill each other, being forced to try to kill each other.
Well, yeah.
And sandwiches can help you with that. They help you stay alive.
And the flappers liked sandwiches?
Oh, I'm sure they did. I have a beautiful excerpt from the New York Times, November 2nd, 1924. The day of sandwiches has arrived. It is so proclaimed by placards and posters plastered over building I was trying so hard to like do a great dramatic reading of this ridiculous stuff.
But you know what? You got to lose well and let it happen sometimes.
That's true. It is so proclaimed by placards and posters plastered over the business districts. A new type of lunchroom substantiates the claim, the sandwich house. It may offer sidelines of hot dishes and pastries, but to sandwiches it owes its existence. This restaurant keeper agrees. Once he was the manager of a large hotel where men came in leisurely, ordered lavishly, and ate copiously. That day is gone, he is convinced as he watches throngs file past his counters and stacks of sliced bread, meat, and cheese disappear. The vogue of the sandwich is attributed to the considerable extent to the rush of modern business life. Men have no time to sit around leisurely waiting for large orders. Now, even the rich, well, kind of like upper middle class or like lower upper class fuckers in New York.
Yeah, not the idle class.
Even they have to fucking rush around. Even they have to fucking run back to goddamn work.
Yeah.
And they can only have a sandwich. That's all they got. That's when like club sandwiches were invented.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Just, I ordered a club sandwich once as a child thinking like, oh, that's a cool name. It probably has good stuff in it. Yeah. And it's all just like 5 different types of meat.
It's like turkey, bacon, and then lettuce and tomato. Right? That's a TBLT.
I don't know. I just remember being really disappointed.
I loved club sandwiches as a kid. I mean, BLTs were my favorite sandwich as a kid.
It's a good sandwich. Yeah. I did like those. But then, of course, so that's in the early 20s, 1924. But sandwiches really fucking took off in 1928 when a Mr. Otto Frederick Rodwetter of Davenport, Iowa.
Rowetter?
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 Not Rodwetter.
Not Rodwetter. There's an H. There's no D's there. I don't know what's happening. But this motherfucker invented sliced bread.
Whoa.
Yeah.
He made the best thing.
Yeah.
Before he made the thing that defines good things.
You know what was before that?
Betty White?
No, it was the best thing since wrapped bread. Because they would wrap up the bread. Yeah, they would wrap up the bread in like this wax paper and it would last a lot longer. Mm-hmm. And so he had to figure out a way to then slice it and then quickly wrap it because like once it's sliced, it goes stale a lot faster.
Yeah. I love the idea that, at least in American history, we have always said things are only as good as our most efficient bread mechanism of our time.
Because it can feed so many people. So, like, it created uniform and thinner slices, which means people are eating more bread at a time, and they're eating more bread more frequently because it's so easy to grab. And that means that people were really into spreads and jams and things you put on that bread. And that's when the sandwich, like, really hits its fucking weird-ass heyday. I have a recipe from 700 Sandwiches by Florence A. Cowles. Florence notes in her introduction, "One's imagination likes to play with the astonishment and lively interest the sporting Earl would manifest could he see the development of his invention had undergone since..." Oh my God, 20th century sentences are so long.
Oh yeah, no, they like to really run on there.
Can I just say that I think this might be those writers' fault that I keep fucking up their sentences.
I don't really disagree. They
weren't super into periods. Like, I'm not into periods. If you've ever read, like, any of my writing, it's like a very long Lovecraftian sentence. And now as I try and read these out loud, I'm like, maybe I should change that up.
I love periods.
So let's start again. I'm going to take a big deep breath
Go for it.
and see how far we can get.
I think you can do this. Also, Vegemite was invented in 1922.
Ooh.
So, speaking of spreads people love on sandwiches, yeast extract.
One's imagination likes to play with the astonishment and lively interest the sporting Earl would manifest could he see the development his invention had undergone since then, and its evolution from a hasty improvisation into a thing of art and intricacy. For the sandwich has both become complex and compound. Some branches of the now numerous sandwich family have risen in life and put on airs. They bloom exotically at afternoon teas and receptions. There is a constant and insistent demand for new ideas in sandwiches, new combinations in fillings, and new and attractive architectural plans for construction. The origin of many of the recipes in this book have become shrouded in obscurity. But in this book will be found represented practically every kind of sandwich invented thus far.
I'm glad Ms. Cowles appreciated the need to disrupt the sandwich game.
Yeah, so
through
if you
innovation.
if you want to know all of these,
Yeah.
check out 700 Sandwiches by Florence A. Cowles.
That is a lot of sandwiches.
But I'm just going to share my two favorites, and perhaps by sharing these two favorites, you'll get an idea of how she got up to 700 fucking sandwiches. The tomato sandwich soup, which is 2 slices of bread spread with butter with a leaf of lettuce and some undiluted tomato soup on it.
Yeah. I mean, that just to me screams 1928.
Fucking right.
I mean, like, you just take it out of the can and immediately put it on the bread with nothing else, really.
And it's a fucking soup, too.
Yeah.
Bland shit. This one is my favorite. This is the favorite one I read. The crust butter sandwich. Mm-hmm. Sounds good, right? Sounds like it's going to be this crusty, buttery thing.
Yeah, I expect something very refreshing and rich from this.
Put the crusts from the sandwiches through the food chopper and mix with salad dressing and creamed butter and spread between other slices of bread, thereby avoiding waste.
So it's like a crust tapenade, basically?
Yeah, she was kind of anticipating the Great Depression, I think.
Yeah, well, given the year, yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be surprising.
No, it would not. So jumping ahead past the Great Depression, in which, I mean, we'll talk about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and other innovations, sort of what they ate then. But during 1943, U.S. officials imposed a short-lived ban on sliced bread as a wartime conservation measure. They banned sliced bread. They banned the best thing since wrapped bread.
That's crazy. I mean, it's a level of rationing that's just crazy to think about, really.
Yeah, like banning sliced bread. They were concerned about like the wax paper that had to be used for it, and like.
So they were concerned about the wrapped bread too, then.
Well, they were like, it has to be a thicker wax to go around the sliced bread to keep it from going stale as fast. You know, some bullshit. So a distraught housewife wrote into the New York Times about this ban. I should like to let you know how important sliced bread is to the morale and saneness of a household. My husband and 4 children are all in a rush during and after breakfast. Without ready sliced bread, I must do the slicing for the toast. 2 pieces for each one, that's 10. For their lunches, I must cut by hand at least 20 slices for 2 sandwiches apiece. After that, I make my own toast. 22 slices of bread to be cut in a hurry.
And that's 22 slices of bread just for breakfast. It
includes lunch.
Oh, that includes lunch? Okay.
Yeah, because she has to make their fucking lunches.
And
that
makes sense.
During the war, which means that women could have jobs, like in fucking factories. So this bitch is probably like trying to get her fucking kids to school, just like nowadays, trying to get her fucking kids fed and out the door and with lunches to school. And then she has to make sure the husband is fed and out to work or wherever he's going. And then this bitch has to go to work.
But also not only that, these aren't even all the slices she's slicing all day. She could easily end up slicing 36 slices over the course of the day, but 22 in the rushed morning is crazy.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of fucking slices of bread. You basically have to cut up a whole loaf first thing in the morning.
Oh wow.
So a couple months later, from January to March was how long this ban lasted.
I'm glad that was a very short ban.
Oh yeah. And so I wanted to close us out, take a pause on the history of sandwiches.
Yes.
With 1944, this writer about the origin of food habits, perhaps informed by this hatred of sliced bread that the government has just shown. Maybe he's just sad because there's a war.
I mean, 1944 was not like a happy time.
No.
For anyone.
No. So let's check out what Mr. H.D. Renner has to say about the origin of food habits. And I'm going to take a big, deep breath because this motherfucker also has really long sentences.
So I unfortunately don't have a fact about Marmite to drop in here.
The invention of the sandwich and its acceptance as an institution is a typical example of the power of the ways of life to prevail over so-called rules of gastronomy and even established facts of physiology and psychology. According to all the rules of sciences governing nutrition, the sandwich should have never been born. If a slice of bread is spread with some other appetizing food, it is obvious to both the eyes and the nose what it is, and there is a definite psychological reaction. When, however, the appealing surface is covered by another slice of bread, it's a matter of guesswork to find out what the filling is. Their popularity owes much to the fact that the distances between home and work have increased enormously in recent times, and they can so easily be wrapped up and stowed away in a man's pocket. The hand that comes in contact only with the dry side of the bread, so that the fingers are not smeared, this even creates the fallacy that dirt from the fingers will not adhere to the bread. It is only high up in the culinary scale that one finds delicacies of bread on bread without the coffin lid, which spells death to the flavor.
I have so many thoughts about that quote. For one, I've never heard the fallacy that dirt doesn't stick to bread.
I feel that sometimes.
Oh, really?
When I'm like eating a sandwich, I'll like think to myself, like, I should really wash my hands, but then I don't.
Oh, well, I mean, I'll do that, but I don't go, well, you know, the dirt doesn't attach to the bread. I go, my immune system's pretty good. Also, I love the coffin lid, which spells death to the flavor.
Oh, yeah. No, this guy fucking hated sandwiches.
He does.
And this is in 1944. The sandwiches have been around for at least, like, popular for 20 years.
Right.
But around, like, for, 40 years.
Yeah.
Just about in America.
And he hates them.
He hates them. He fucking hates them. The thing that I found interesting about his quote is him saying that they're getting more popular because the distances between work and home are increasing.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting and very revealing.
Yeah. Wherever there's a pop in their popularity, it's because of some, shitty capitalist fucking invention.
Right.
To further capitalize our time.
Yeah.
Haha. But let's, instead of thinking about that, think about sandwich night.
Yeah, no, sandwiches may have that root, but now they symbolize something very different, which is because of Sandwich Night, which was a holiday that was created when cast members of TCGS realized that a number of them would be out of town for Thanksgiving in 2011, the night before Thanksgiving. And so they decided to do a small intimate show and invite the few New Yorkers who remained to come down to the studio and eat with them. And the original plan was for it to be a whole normal, traditional Thanksgiving dinner. But then they realized, wait a second, we don't have time to do a whole Thanksgiving dinner for the night before Thanksgiving to air on public access. So Shannon O'Neill, owner of the best hair on television, suggested, what if we only make sandwiches? And that was the birth of Sandwich Night. And the first one was episode 23 of TCGS.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very early.
Yeah.
And the tradition continued for the rest of its public access run. And then after the special took over the time slot, they continued the tradition. And then CGP's first Sandwich Night will be the 9th occurrence of this sacred holiday.
So Geth has come for the past 9 years.
Yeah.
He has been in that studio, whether or not it was his show.
Right, yeah.
Sandwich Night happened.
3, at least, I think around 3 of them were the special without Brett Davis and not the Chris Gethard show. Like the first one was, the special was on, but they called it the Chris Gethard show when they were on Fusion. And there's a bunch of fun references to the fact that they're used to being on cable and that Geth is getting that Fusion money, baby. And then
for so short a time.
Yeah. But then the special did special branded episodes, but they still got Chris to come down, and then characters who looked suspiciously like Brett Davis would hassle him throughout Sandwich Night. And then, interestingly, Sandwich Night almost died after the second year. Geth went in for a colonoscopy, and depending on the results of the colonoscopy, he was going to cancel it and not do it. But thankfully for us, fate intervened with his willingness to cancel Sandwich Night and revealed that his hemorrhoids were caused by stress and not his food. He says this. This was Sandwich Night 3.
Mine are caused by both.
Oh, that's true.
That's why I can't eat grilled cheese anymore. Makes me really sad.
I can't because I'm lactose intolerant.
I
can.
Me too.
I'm medicated away.
Yeah, you're able to do it. Medication doesn't even help me.
Yeah. But Sandwich Night 5 was the first time that people were encouraged to bring pre-assembled sandwiches to the studio. Before then, there were tables set up around, and people would go from table to table making sandwiches out of all the various ingredients people brought.
But, like Nutella.
Yeah, like Nutella, like
Marmite.
gummy bears and Marmite and chicken. And then Mimi on the Hoops would bring healthy bread and healthy ingredients for people who wanted healthy sandwiches. But Geth said in that Sandwich Night 5, that the reason that they wanted people to bring pre-assembled sandwiches is because some scofflaw drugged people.
What is a scofflaw?
It's like a scoundrel. It's like a rake.
What is the etymology of scofflaw?
I don't know.
Where did you learn the word scofflaw?
It's a word. Do you not believe me that it's a word?
No, I believe you that it's a word. I've never heard that word before in my entire life.
It's a person who flouts the law.
Oh, that makes sense.
Scoff the law.
Scofflaw. Okay.
Oh, it was from Prohibition. So I guess it's actually relevant.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, so then... Oh, no, he said a low-down miscreant. Which is interesting. It's not clear if they meant to drug people or if they just, like, brought special bread. Well, because it has to be the bread. Anyway.
It doesn't have to be
It doesn't have to be the bread. It could be anything else.
There are many ways
butter,
to
it
drug
could be
food.
That's true.
It's probably the butter.
It's probably the butter.
Adult.
I am adult.
Yeah.
That's true. I'm adult on these drug-related matters.
You're from California. Wheat butter's everywhere.
That's true.
Yeah.
But over its storied history, Sandwich Night has included many celebrity cameos, including James Adomian's portrayal of Dr. Sebastian Gorka and Brett Davis's portrayal of Count Dracula. And then the number who wants a sandwich but doesn't like red meat, especially steaks. And then some of the Sandwich Night traditions that you're probably familiar with are Geth wandering around the studio and asking random people what's in your sandwich. Leonard, the Sandwich Lion, giving us the Sandwich Night blessing, some of which you heard in the intro to the show. viewers using Skype to show off their pets, the King of Sandwiches visiting M&N and amping up the crowd, LLC playing the traditional sandwich ballad, which you'll hear at the end of the show, beginning with the Sandwich Night chant, which we did a very small version of at the beginning of this, and remote guests Skyping in from their Sandwich Night parties. And definitely let the Discord know if you're having a Sandwich Night party and Skype in. Some of the sandwiches that have been enjoyed at Sandwich Night are the Elvis, which is peanut butter, banana, and bacon, which Murph enjoyed after cooking it on an unauthorized grill, where Chris saw it and pointed out we're not allowed to do that. And Murph was like, I don't know where it came from. I just saw it and walked over and started grilling.
This grill just manifested in the studio. I don't know.
Sandwiches made with ice cream bread, which is ice cream and self-rising flour as the bread.
Does that work?
People have done ice cream bread. The recipe for it that I saw online was self-rising flour and ice cream. I don't know for sure that that's how they did it.
Does it make bread, or is it like a goopy?
I mean, it's like bread. It looked like bread, at least. I haven't had any, but people would ask, are there any ice creams that people specifically want in ice cream bread? Andres, the kid who got his hair cut by Zach Galifianakis, made a sandwich that included Nutella, gummy worms, cinnamon, potato chips, Ritz, cookies, roast beef, cheese, whipped cream, Oreos, Cheetos, sprinkles, and Kit Kat. And when Geth found out that was his sandwich, Geth just said, well, we got to see you take the first bite on camera, and it was terrible.
I feel like if they had taken out the roast beef and Cheetos, it would be good.
Yeah, I think that the mistake with that sandwich was they blended a couple of savory options in what is a very sweet sandwich, and they're savory options that don't go well with sweet.
Just roast beef should not be. I mean, I don't.
Well, you're a
eat,
vegetarian
I don't
too,
eat roast beef. But I don't feel like it pairs with Nutella.
No, I don't think it does either. And then there's also two sandwiches that are really conceptual art pieces, I think, exposing and exploring the boundaries of the sandwich as a concept, where someone put an entire rotisserie chicken between two slices of bread because they were running late. And they didn't cut up the rotisserie chicken. It was just a rotisserie chicken between two slices of bread. And then someone else had an entire apple between two slices of bread.
That's great.
And I love those because it's really, are they still sandwiches? All the ingredients are there, but they're a form that is very unusual and not portable.
Well, they could be sandwiches. We wanted to talk a little bit about the history of some specific sandwiches and some of the weird sandwiches that you can find in this great nation.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start with, what's a sandwich? So what's a sandwich, Forrest?
I think it's anything between two slices of bread. So I would say those two are sandwiches.
Yeah, well, a court in Boston, Massachusetts in 2006 would agree with you. A sandwich includes at least two slices of bread. Under this definition, the court finds that the term sandwich is not commonly understood to include burritos, tacos, and quesadillas, which are made with tortillas.
Interesting.
And the issue stemmed from the question of whether a restaurant that sold burritos could move into a shopping center or another restaurant had a no-compete clause for other sandwich shops.
It never occurred to me that there could be those kind of real-world business results, consequences over that internet debate about what is a sandwich.
Yeah.
I can't wait to find out the legal consequences of how dogs wear pants.
But here's a sandwich that really there was a lot of history in this sandwich. It was really interesting to learn about peanut butter and jelly.
Oh.
Yeah. So peanuts, of course, they're a New World food.
Yeah.
They're from here, like the Americas. And so peanuts, of course, have been made into a paste by indigenous peoples for a very long time.
That makes sense.
But then we killed them all. And so we had to relearn how to do that.
That also makes sense.
So we know the bread history. We know about Mr. So-and-so who invented sliced bread in 1928. Peanuts and peanut butter, contrary to popular belief, it was not invented by Dr. George Washington Carver.
What?
No. He did advance the peanut crop in the South in the 1900s. And included a peanut paste in his book about 300 uses for peanuts. But it was actually created sometime during the 1880s by this random St. Louis
St. Louis.
St. Louis? I never know how to pronounce that.
Yeah, it's a flip of the coin.
Dr. Ambrose Straub. Ambrose. He made a peanut paste for geriatric patients who had trouble swallowing or had bad teeth.
Oh, that makes sense.
And Mr. John Harvey Kellogg of Kellogg's fame
Oh, yeah.
and circumcision fame.
And eating cornflakes to lower your libido.
Yeah, he was a weird dude with a lot of hang-ups. He popularized circumcision in America.
Wait,
It was
really?
yes. It was only done for Jews. 'Cause or for people for whom there was a religious
Right.
tradition.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's icky. You should all do this for kind of no reason because our hygiene is
Right.
like at levels where you don't have to worry about that here.
Huh.
But yeah, no, he was just super about that. And he had the patent to manufacture peanut butter. And it was a fancy ass thing, you know? It was mostly for like fancy, high class, health conscious people. So for example, a god awful peanut butter sandwich before the peanut butter and jelly craze, spread slices of bread generously with peanut butter, then fill with thick slices of tomato that have been allowed to stand in French dressing for 15 minutes. French dressing was super popular.
Huh.
A lot of these recipes are like, put your shit in French dressing.
I like how it clearly shows that, like, instinct of, like, you know what would make peanut butter better? Like a sweet thing. And they're like, what's sweet? Tomato. Because, like, it is kind of sweet. Like, it is that, like, you know.
But it's also tangy.
Exactly. No, I'm not saying it would be good.
I don't know. Maybe that's just like our taste because we grew up on peanut butter and jelly.
Maybe, yeah.
It could be. Well, that brings us to the next item of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We have the bread, we have the peanut butter. Now all that's left is the jelly. In 1917, Mr. Paul Welsh of Welsh's Jelly fame.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he got the patent for pureeing grapes and turning them into jelly, and called it Grape-a-lade.
Grape-a-lade.
Yep.
I like that. I like that name.
Yeah.
It's much better than jelly.
Yeah. And it was super popular with the troops in World War I.
Oh.
Yeah, it was something that they could like send over. So when they came home, they were like, "Give me some Grape-a-lade. I have like one arm left."
Yeah.
And a lot of PTSD.
Shell shock. They have a lot of shell shock.
Sure.
We got to stay era appropriate.
Shell shock. So here's a lovely quote from Peanuts, the illustrious history of the goober pea. I didn't know it was called a goober pea. I didn't read that until just now.
That's why that peanut butter and jelly pre-mixed thing is called goobers.
Really?
It must be if it's called the goober pea, right?
Oh my gosh, it must be. I
never realized. I thought it was just like, I was like, that's almost boogers.
Wow. So the first reference to PB&J sandwiches was published by Julia Davis Chandler in 1901. So that's before sliced bread.
Wow.
But when it was still pretty like fancy, you know, these were like tea sandwiches and for like health conscious individuals.
But if you had told me if you had asked me ahead of time, do you think sliced bread or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are older? I would have definitely thought sliced bread was older.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I clearly am wrong.
Well, you had good reason to think
Right.
so. Because pretty quickly, like peanut butter, started moving down the class structure because it got cheaper and cheaper to make because the industry was commercialized. And then it also got really popular with kids. Why? Because they started putting sugar in it.
It's the American way.
Let's capitalize on those addictions to get you to give us more money.
Let's just add more sugar to it.
Let's add more sugar. The kids are really napping this up.
Kids love sugar. We'll get them hopped up on sugar.
And then, of course, it was all cemented once, you know, our bread happened.
Sliced.
Once our sliced bread happened. That meant that kids could make these sugar bomb sandwiches for themselves. without having to use a knife.
Especially if once you have jelly involved too.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
so much sugar in those things.
And like they were definitely touting peanuts as something that had high calories and high protein.
Oh, yeah.
And so during the Depression, slightly after sliced bread, when you have to leave your child at home with no money and only peanut butter and jelly because there's no money or food, they can eat PB&J.
That makes sense. I'm glad that sliced bread had been invented before the Depression.
Yeah, that was a good thing. That was a good thing. So we also looked into some like more regional dishes, regional sandwiches. That's the history of PB&J. It's a history of, once again, things being fancily created for high-class people. And then as, it starts getting turned into factory-made stuff with random bullshit in it, like sugar and other fillers, it ended up in our poor children's mouths. So here's something I learned that I was very surprised by. If you live outside Northern California, you probably haven't had a Dutch crunch roll.
Really? I had no idea that was a regional thing.
Yeah, no, I love Dutch crunch. So Dutch crunch is like a super doughy, dense bread with like, they call it giraffe print crust on top. That's like crunchy. It's called tiger bread elsewhere. I don't know why we call it Dutch crunch.
I don't either.
It's great. You like bite into it. It tastes delicious. It scrapes up the top of your mouth, but like you don't care. It's so tasty. But yeah,
and Judge Robin had a tip where if you turn it upside down, it doesn't cut up your mouth.
Yeah. But apparently no other motherfuckers use it.
That's really interesting. I mean, it's really good, and I don't think anything about it is... Because, like, it makes sense that sourdough is mostly here because it's the air here that makes sourdough happen. I can't think of anything with Dutch crunch that would make it, like, naturally limited to here. So that's interesting.
Yeah. The next one is the po' boy sandwich, the traditional...
I love the story behind this one.
Yeah, it's a sandwich that's, like, fried seafood, typically on a roll.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it was created in the 1920s by these two dudes, Benny and Clovis Martin. So yeah, they were streetcar workers before, and then they opened up a grocery. And shortly after they had their grocery, the streetcar workers went on strike because they weren't getting paid enough. The union went on strike, and they said to all of them, like, hey, like, y'all don't have any fucking money because you're striking. You wouldn't have had much more if you were working. But you don't have any money because you're striking. Come to our fucking shop and show us your union card. We'll feed you. We will feed all of our poor boys.
I love that. I didn't realize that it had such a heroic origin story.
Right? It's like one of the few sandwiches. It, like the Hillel sandwich, is a celebration of freedom and unity.
Honestly, I always kind of assumed the opposite.
Yeah?
That because it's like scraps of roast beef or like scraps of stuff, it was like the poor boy only gets the scraps. Like I always assumed it was... No, but like...
They were poor.
No, but like I always assumed it was derogatory a little bit where it's not. It's like... It's not. That doesn't sound like, at least. It sounds...
No, they meant it to be like our
affectionate,
our
like,
unfortunate boys
helping,
who have no money because they're being screwed by the man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. There's also a thing called a chow mein sandwich.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no one I know has ever heard of this, but it is all over the fucking internet. It was originated in Fall River, Massachusetts in like the 1930s or 40s. And it's literally just like a gravy-based chow mein in between like halves of a hamburger-style bun.
Huh.
Because, there were Chinese-American restaurants and, all over there. And they couldn't feed people Chinese food because our, American palate was like, no, give me gravy and carbs and meat. So they just invented new shit that people would like. And yeah, it's the chow mein sandwich. It's a real thing. It's apparently not well known outside of like that little part of New England. but it was helpful. It was created because it was a really low-cost meal. And
I just looked this up, and it is crazy to see images of the chow mein sandwich.
it's literally just like someone slopped a bunch of chow mein on a plate and like put a burger bun, like balanced it on top.
Yeah, because it's not like when you described it first, I was picturing it where like the chow mein would be relatively to scale with the buns.
Like you could eat it like a sandwich with your hands. You cannot eat the, well, you could.
Well, in some cases, maybe, but for the most part, I mean, you could. Yeah, you could. You would just have a lot of chow mein falling out of the edges of it because it's basically a plate full of chow mein with a bun on the bottom and a bun just sort of sitting on the top. Not even necessarily, I would imagine, actually like on top of each other like in a sandwich.
Oh, probably not, because how could you see where you put the bottom bun once you slap the chow mein on top? But yeah, it provided a low-cost meal to the economically depressed region that had mostly recent immigrants from Canada and Europe.
That makes sense, yeah.
All those places.
That's a true American original.
True American original, just like fries on sandwiches. I thought this was a California thing.
Oh, I did too. I mean, because it's called the California-style burrito when they do that with a burrito. It's generally referred to as California-style, but apparently it's not ours.
California style is fries and avocado on stuff, but apparently a Mr. Joe Primanti?
Either one could be.
Either one could be correct. And his brothers, there's a restaurant so I got all of this from the Primanti Brothers restaurant, which is in Pittsburgh. It's like a local chain, and they have like our story, written up. And so these guys had like a sandwich stand, I suppose, or like a little shop in Pittsburgh. During the Great Depression, there were tons of trucks going back and forth through Pittsburgh at all times of the day. And according to Joe's cousin, John DePrinter, aren't you proud of me that I didn't put an N in there and say John DePrinter?
I am. I'm very proud of you.
One winter, a fella drove in with a load of potatoes. He brought a few of them over to the restaurant to see if they were frozen. I fried the potatoes in our grill and they looked pretty good. A few of our customers asked for them, so I put the potatoes on their sandwiches. Simple. Yeah. Like
that is simple.
The idea was that, like, if you're a fucking trucker, you can't also have a side of fries. They hadn't invented the like In-N-Out car box yet.
Right, yeah. No, it's a genius idea for truckers to be able to eat everything sort of as one go handheld item.
Yeah. And then Mr. Joe retired to California in the 1940s.
What?
I think that's why we have fries in our stuff.
I mean, I think you have to. You're right. I know that there's no proof of that, but you got to free your mind and open yourself to this possibility.
Yep. That's my conspiracy theory.
I agree with it.
Connections between California and Pittsburgh. Next one is the Fluffer Nutter.
So I've heard of this one. I haven't had it, but I've heard of. Oh no, I have had one.
You have? Was it good?
Yes. So it was very good. I had one at a party.
Ooh, so a Fluffer Nutter sandwich is peanut butter and marshmallow cream. It was invented. This started like way back during World War I. Miss Amory and Emma Curtis of Melrose, Massachusetts, again, with weird shit.
Yeah.
They invented snowflake marshmallow cream and published a recipe for the Liberty sandwich.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Liberty, which was peanut butter and marshmallow cream on oat or barley bread. Because sugar is freedom.
I mean, I do think you have to have a certain amount of freedom to be able to think, you know what I'm going to do? Put marshmallow fluff and this peanut butter together. That's out of the box thinking and it requires a free thinker to come up with because it shouldn't happen.
No, it really shouldn't.
Like I've had it and it was just very sticky. Oh, also nutritionally.
Was it tasty though?
Of course. It's marshmallow and peanut butter.
I want it so bad.
It's kind of like a s'more if you swapped the chocolate for peanut butter.
And the last sandwich that I wanted to profile here also has a lot of history, so I saved it for last. That's the Cuban sandwich.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Cuban sandwich is I have never had a Cuban sandwich.
I've had a Cuban sandwich. It's very good.
What's in a Cuban sandwich, Forrest?
It's been a while since I've had one, so I will have to double check what's in it.
Oh, well, I mean, but what was it like for you? I know that it's a bunch of meat.
Yeah, which is what I really liked about it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the meat. It was very good meat, the one I had. I don't remember where I had it, but it was just, I mean, it was very good. It's basically a ham and cheese.
Yeah.
And that's like a classic sandwich that, like, you can't, it's hard to mess up, but also, like, ham and cheese croissants were my favorite thing as a kid. And so it's essentially... It's that same flavor combination that drew me to ham and cheese croissants and Hot Pockets, but in a sandwich. Much higher quality than a Hot Pocket, obviously, but...
Well, yeah. So this sandwich dates very far back between like in the 1860s, between the 1860s and 90s. Cuba had like a bunch of wars for independence, which means a ton of Cubans left and were hanging out in Key West, Florida, which had a fuck ton of cigar factories. So there were a ton of Cubans in there. They discovered America's classic ham and cheese sandwich and were like, we want a better sandwich. So we're going to put pickles, ham, roast pork, Swiss cheese, tomato, lettuce, and mayo.
It is a big improvement on the simple ham and cheese sandwich.
Fucking right. Like, you can tell, like, so way back when we're like, what was the first sandwich written in America? It was that English woman who was like, ham and mustard, which is not that far off from ham and cheese.
No.
And then it took a bunch of fucking Cubans to come over and be like, why don't you put good things on your sandwiches?
But we already put the mustard.
So they called this particular version of the sandwich the ham and cheese with pickles, ham, roast pork, Swiss cheese, tomato, lettuce, and mayo, a mixto. I don't fucking know how to pronounce this. I apologize. Mixto, meaning that it was just a mixture of meats.
Huh.
And then later in the century, people started calling it Cuban because this is America.
Yeah.
And you are defined by where you were from 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Unless you're white.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter when you got here.
Yeah. That's yep.
So around like 1886, there was a huge fire that destroyed like a bunch of the cigar factories.
Oh, no.
And so Mr. Victor Martinez Ybor. Vicente Martinez Ybor. You can tell that I don't read very carefully.
Yes.
I'm very sorry. He opted to move his operations to Tampa, Florida, which is going to be like pretty important later in this story. He set up shop in Ybor City, which he named after himself.
Oh, yeah, no, he definitely named that.
Yeah. And Cuban immigrants moved with him, of course, and brought their sandwiches, and were working with Italian immigrants who love salami. And so they're like, why don't we add salami to this mix of ham, cheese, pickles, roast pork, Swiss cheese, tomato, lettuce, and mayo? Salami, too. Sounds great. It's salami.
I also love salami. So.
Around that same time, like around like 1896, this Sicilian dude named Francesco Ferlita created a new bread in Ybor City at a Hoven bakery, which means young bakery. I don't know. I know very little other languages because I'm a rube. And it was kind of like a French baguette, but it was like 3 feet long and had a crispy crust and soft, airy inside. And then he scored the top with a palmetto leaf. And it was Cuban bread. He called it Cuban bread.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why, but he did. So the first mentions of the Cuban...
Probably because it was invented in Ybor City. And so he's probably making it specifically for that, to be used with that sandwich or something.
Well, yeah, likely, but it wasn't called a Cuban sandwich yet.
Oh, you're right. But then it's probably just the Ybor City thing.
Yeah, probably just that. So the first recorded mentions of a distinct Cuban sandwich were from a workers' cafe in Ybor City and West Tampa from around 1900. So there's definitely a Cuban sandwich that happened there. But there is this intense rivalry between Miami, and Tampa over who has the best Cuban sandwich.
Yeah.
Because in Miami, they didn't put the salami in.
Right.
But in Tampa, they're like, we're Italian. We like our salami.
I think I had a Miami Cuban when I had one.
Yeah, that's the most popular right now, like sort of around the country. But yeah, so we definitely know that a Cuban with salami was advertised in 1900. A little later, Miami's like, no, we have the only Cuban. Who knows? But we have the word of somebody, a Mr. Frank Garces Jr., whose father, Frank Garces, who was called Paco, made and sold the first Cuban sandwich in Miami in 1947. He said that when his family moved to Miami in 1947, he bought a bar and sold sandwiches, one of which he called the Cuban sandwich, which was, ham, pork, Swiss cheese, pickle, butter, yellow mustard, and then pressed it to heat it. That's the key of a Cuban. Is you kind of press it like a panini, but not like all the way like a panini, and you use the Cuban bread, and it's full of meat. You can't just have like a mozzarella tomato one. But yeah.
So you're saying that was the first Cuban, not the first mixto?
No.
Right.
The mixtos were way earlier. This individual claims that he created the first Cuban sandwich that was called a Cuban sandwich. And his mixture is the one that like sort of spread.
Yeah.
But Tampa would say, fuck you, our first we did the first Cuban sandwich and it had salami and you're a poser. So yeah, sandwiches steeped in rivalry. Yeah. In 1937, the Miami News showed a Cuban that included salami. So at one point, Miami had salami in their Cubans. I don't know why this is such a big deal for people.
I mean, I don't know. I think those kinds of rivalries are fun because both sides probably know that the stakes are very low.
I mean, you think they're very low, but...
Well, but, I mean...
How many people have died over a sandwich, Forrest? I think it's much higher than you would expect.
I'm just trying to think of what of our kind of rivalry like that. Though, what do we think we do better than anyone else? And it's like, well, we think we're better than everyone else. So that's a weird thing for San Francisco. San Francisco thinks it has a rivalry with everyone.
That's very true. Just very low-key competitive.
And then you ask the people who it thinks it's competing against, and they're like, I don't... what? That's not a thing.
So that's the history of the sandwich.
Yeah.
From its humble beginnings as a celebratory meal celebrating freedom, and then later just some motherfucker who wanted to keep partying all night and decided to put his name on a thing that had existed for a very long time, all the way through multiple world wars, gaining popularity as people were more and more separated from their homes, had to spend more and more time working for the man. Wherever there is poverty, there are sandwiches. Wherever there is exploitation, there are sandwiches.
But the sandwich's potential to bring joy was discovered in 2011 when the Chris Gethard Show started Sandwich Night and brought about the culmination of the history of the sandwich.
Well, I think that's the thing about the sandwich is that, with Rabbi Hillel, it was the bitter herbs and the sweet haroset.
Oh, and
the sandwich is the sweet.
Yeah.
No matter what you're going through, no matter what the deal is, you at least have this sandwich, just stuff in between bread. I didn't realize how meat-centric sandwiches have been throughout history.
I had a suspicion.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me super grateful to live in a time where we have access to vegetables.
Right, and we can just get a hummus sandwich or something that's still really good.
Yeah, back then, there were only animals to eat. You had to, or you would fucking die.
Yeah.
So I'm very glad about that.
Given how important the 20s were to the history of the sandwich, I wonder if we're about to see a sandwich revival, considering we're weeks away from the 20s once again.
I wonder what the new sandwich like innovation would be. Do you think Soylent is the new sandwich?
I was thinking about that when you were mentioning that a lot of the sandwich's success was about people like rushing around to work. Mm-hmm. And I do wonder if, I mean, Soylent is definitely, I think that what's interesting is that Soylent is now the manifestation of that, and sandwiches aren't always thought about in that way anymore. I mean, they're relatively easy, but like, I think that because we have so much food that you just pop in the microwave and then you're done, sandwiches now have a sense of like, well, you made it from scratch at home, you know? Like there's a little bit, not entirely, but like it feels like you put an effort in when you pull out like a homemade sandwich.
But it's still,
it's still the casual, ubiquitous thing, but
yeah, they're everywhere. They started being sold in stores in like the 50s or 60s, and I think it was a Lord and Spencer or something, some British store.
That makes sense given the history.
And the difficulty, of course, was like having them be preserved properly. Right. So that's gross. But, you know?
Well, no one likes a moldy sandwich.
Exactly. When you need a fucking sandwich and you've been driving for hours and you stop at like the fucking bus stop and all they have is like ham and cheese and egg salad sandwiches in a fucking vending machine, you're going to eat that sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the history of sandwiches and sandwich night.
Yeah.
Forrest, what is your sandwich night wish?
Ooh, what's my sandwich night wish?
Yeah. Tell the sandwich night lion what you want for sandwich night.
I mean, Leonard, I would love to see a lot of the best CGP hosts come on to sandwich night, because one of the great things about Sandwich Night in the TCGS days was it really was a community event. Mm-hmm. And so I think getting multiple CGP hosts all on one show, like with Complaint Box, it could be a really good way to build that sense of continuity and community for CGP.
I want to see Leah Bonema.
I also want to see Leah Bonema, of course.
I want to see her with a sandwich. I want to see Christy Cello. I want to see...
I want to see whichever version Riley Soliner does of himself this time. I want to see Mary Houlihan.
Rachel Pegram. I want to see Rachel Pegram. I do want to see Joe Rumroll.
I want to see Josh Sharp eat 3 sandwiches at once.
Carmen Christopher have a great sandwich.
Have the biggest sandwich, a way bigger, more impressive sandwich with gold leaf all over it.
I want to see the Beast Masturbator.
Oh, I really would love to see Connor O'Malley on this.
Right?
Do you want to see Connor O'Malley or the Beast Masturbator?
I'll take either version. Yeah, because like Connor O'Malley always brings something great, even when he's just being himself.
I'd love if he did CGP. That'd be so cool.
God.
He is busy with Joe Pera, but
that's true.
But yeah, and what's your sandwich night wish?
My sandwich night wish is that I figure out a gluten-free vegan sandwich that is also tasty before Wednesday night.
Okay, yeah.
So that I don't have to eat like a sweet potato.
Or like a peanut butter and jelly.
I can't eat peanut butter and jelly.
Can you do peanut butter?
I have to find the gluten-free bread that doesn't taste like ass.
Oh, well, that's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do like peanut butter and honey?
Yeah, I can.
That was always my preference to peanut butter and jelly anyway.
Yeah. I like honey a lot. I need to microwave for honey. So yeah, as we go into a detailed discussion of our pantry, I think we should say good night and good clawn to everyone. We'll see you all on sandwich night. Skype in with your pets. It's this Wednesday, December 3rd at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 p.m. It's December 4th?
Yeah, it's December 4th.
December 4th, this Wednesday. It's fucking sandwich night.
It's sandwich night. The tradition continues.
Get your friends together. Go on the Discord. Go to chrisgeth.com/live. Grab your pets and Skype in. We're going to try and Skype in with our cat, who's sleeping right in front of us right now and probably made a bunch of noises during this.
I think you made a few, but hopefully they're not too bad. Yeah.
Hopefully we didn't stumble too much over our words, like some crazy shit went down right before recording. But it's all good. It's all good. You know why? There are sandwiches. Sandwich night.
Sandwich night. Sandwich night. Sandwich night. Sandwich night.
Sandwich night. Sandwich night. Sandwich night. Sandwich night. Sandwich night.